disturbing secrets hidden inside ancient tombs to fall asleep to Benioth, the relentless son of the Valley of the Kings. The sands whispered secrets no living voice could repeat. Time had draped itself across the jagged cliffs and endless dunes like a shroud, concealing corridors of stone where shadows had lain untouched for millennia. Somewhere in that barren landscape, a single doorway remained sealed, its surface worn smooth by the breath of centuries, its surface etched with hieroglyphs that seemed to vibrate with quiet menace. It was a portal to a world both sacred and forbidden, a realm where death had been king for longer than memory itself. Even the wind, brushing across the limestone ridges, seemed to hesitate here, as if it sensed the warning inscribed in the stone: intruders would pay in kind. The boy king, Tutankhamun, had been buried not with the grandeur that his title demanded, but with a swift and almost fearful precision. Ancient scribes recorded his lineage, yet his tomb bore evidence of a death too sudden, a life too fragile. He was barely 19, a flicker of a soul snuffed out by forces unseen. When Howard Carter descended into the tomb in 1922, his lamplight trembling against the walls, the air itself seemed to thicken, heavy with the musk of centuries and something else, something indefinable. The golden shrines gleamed in the torchlight, coffins nested like Russian dolls, each layer more precious than the last. Tutankhamun's mask, gold polished to perfection, captured the faintest glimmer of light and transformed it into a gaze that felt alive, mournful, accusing. At first, the discovery brought wonder. Scholars marveled, collectors whispered, and the world leaned closer, intoxicated by the boy king's treasure. But soon, shadows crept into reality. Lord Carnarvon, Carter's patron, fell ill with sudden fever, a small cut on his face festering into death. Newspapers spoke of a curse, their ink bleeding with fear. Friends and assistants followed, some succumbing to infections, others to strokes and accidents too swift to ignore. Was it fate, or the residue of ancient spells? Scholars speculated. Some blamed mold spores, others whispered of coincidence, but the tomb itself refused explanation. Marks were found on the pharaoh's body, strange abrasions echoing punishments once inflicted by priests upon those condemned. In jars sealed for eternity, organs lay preserved. Yet some inscriptions had been deliberately altered, symbols mistranslated, as if someone in antiquity had tampered with the sacred instructions for the afterlife. The tomb's design itself is enigmatic. It is modest, almost hastily constructed, lacking the vast corridors and chambers found in other royal burials. Some argue that Tutankhamun was murdered, poisoned in a court conspiracy that historians can only piece together in fragments. Others suggest he was sacrificed by duty, an instrument of dynastic survival, his youth and promise extinguished to protect the kingdom teetering on paranoia. Within the silence of the chambers, the golden sarcophagus remains sealed, and the nested treasures conceal as much as they reveal. One can almost feel the eyes of the boy king in that darkness, a presence at once regal and tragic, observing the living as they stumble through the echoes of his death. And yet, beyond the physical, there is the weight of time itself. The Valley of the Kings is littered with tombs whose owners are lost to memory. Yet Tutankhamun's story reaches across millennia because of its fragile intersection with mortality, power, and fear. His tomb speaks not merely of death, but of the cost of curiosity, of human desire to claim what is meant to rest. Even now, standing before the fractured doorway, one feels a quiet awe and a trembling hesitation, as if some secrets are designed to breathe slowly in the dark, to linger beyond our comprehension, demanding reverence and patience. Perhaps this is the true curse: not fever, not poison, not accident, but a reminder that the dead are not trophies. They are stories folded into eternity, voices that whisper through stone, demanding the living to approach with humility. Tutankhamun's tomb is more than a repository of gold. It is a mirror reflecting ambition, mortality, and the delicate, unsettling boundary between reverence and intrusion. The boy king sleeps, and his tomb exhales a warning. Some doors, once open, do not simply reveal they judge, they remember, they endure. Even now, in the Valley of the Kings, when the wind dies and the sand stills, there is a quiet heartbeat beneath the stone, a pulse that tells us that Tutankhamun's secret is not just a story of a boy king, but a meditation on the weight of disturbance, the solemnity of death, and the silent justice of the ages. And so, the doorway remains, half seen, half remembered, a sacred threshold where history sleeps, and where the living are forever reminded of the cost of curiosity. High above the shimmering Nile, where the cliffs of Deir el Bahari rise like jagged sentinels guarding the secrets of millennia, A silence waits that feels almost alive. It drapes over the desert in waves, broken only by the occasional cry of a bird of prey or the whisper of sand against stone. Here, far from the bustling life of Thebes, a tomb holds a presence that refuses rest, a figure whose very posture seems to scream across time. The air is thick with the memory of fear and betrayal, of lives cut short not by fate alone, but by the unforgiving hand of human ambition. The tomb belongs to a man whose name echoes faintly in the fragments of papyrus and court records. Prince Pentuer, son of Pharaoh Ramesses III. History tells us that he was no ordinary prince. In an era when dynasties were guarded as fiercely as treasure, betrayal was not merely a sin, it was an execution waiting to unfold. Pentuer is said to have been involved in a plot so audacious it would have shaken the throne itself. Within the harem of the pharaoh, whispers became conspiracies. Courtiers, servants, and even family members moved like shadows, conspiring to end the life of the king. The attempt failed, but the price was exacted with ruthless precision. Justice in ancient Egypt was a thing of ceremony, ritual, and cruelty. It demanded a punishment that transcended mere death. It required an eternal mark, a reminder that betrayal leaves scars even beyond the grave. When modern archaeologists unearthed Pentuer's remains, they were struck by the unnatural horror captured in the body, the mouth frozen in an eternal scream, as if the prince had spoken words that death itself could not silence. The body was wrapped not in fine linen, the mark of royal favor, but in sheepskin, a sign of impurity, of disgrace. His organs, normally removed and preserved to guide the soul into the afterlife, remained inside his body, a gesture of denial. The embalmers, meticulous and obedient to custom, had deliberately left him incomplete, refusing him the sacred passage that all other royals were granted. Perhaps they feared contamination, or perhaps they obeyed a command that ensured his torment would continue, even as he lay beneath the stone forever. Chemical analysis centuries later reveals traces of strangulation or poison, a death carried out with calculated precision, swift enough to prevent rebellion yet violent enough to warn all who might consider treachery. In the shadows of the tomb, the prince's expression suggests a consciousness frozen between worlds, aware yet immobile, a silent witness to the horrors that humans can inflict upon one another. Some scholars argue that this punishment was political erasure, a deliberate attempt to remove him from history, to ensure that memory itself would turn against him. Others suggest that the screams captured in his visage are a symbol, an eternal caution, a statement that divine kingship brooks no betrayal. The chamber in which Pentuer rests is modest, a stark contrast to the grandeur of other royal tombs. Carved into limestone, its walls are bare except for the faint traces of hieroglyphs that once narrated his lineage and deeds. Light from torches, flickering and hesitant, illuminates the contours of his wrapped form, casting shadows that seem to pulse with life. Even the air feels heavier here, as though carrying the weight of unspoken words and unrealized justice. Every bone, every line of linen, is a reminder that death in ancient Egypt was not merely a cessation of life, but a message, meticulously crafted and sent across eternity. As one moves through the tomb, it becomes impossible to ignore the tension that lingers. One can almost hear the whispers of the court, the plotting and scheming that led to Pentuer's downfall. The silence is suffocating, yet it is not empty. It resonates with grief, rage, and the weight of consequences that even time cannot diminish. The prince's scream, forever frozen, is a bridge between worlds, a haunting reflection of human cruelty and cosmic justice. In this way, the tomb becomes more than a resting place. It is a stage, a narrative suspended in stone and shadow, where betrayal is eternal and innocence is crushed beneath the weight of power. And yet, in the stillness, there is also reflection. Pentuer's fate forces contemplation of the human desire to control, to punish, to manipulate the living and the dead. His punishment was both intimate and grand, a reminder that in a world obsessed with order and hierarchy, disobedience could be obliterated not just physically, but spiritually. The tomb whispers that death does not always bring relief. Sometimes it prolongs torment, rendering the condemned a silent teacher to those who come after, warning that betrayal leaves marks that transcend the grave. Even now, standing at the entrance of that stone chamber, one feels the pull of history's cold hand. The prince's silent scream echoes in the mind, a story of ambition, fear, and retribution carved in flesh and preserved in linen. It is not merely a mystery of archaeology, it is a meditation on morality, power, and the fragility of trust. Within these walls, time slows. and the living are forced to confront the consequences of actions that ripple far beyond their own. Brief lives. The screaming mummy of Deir el-Bahari is more than a relic. It is a mirror of the human soul, reflecting both our capacity for cruelty and our eternal longing for justice, even when justice itself becomes a haunting echo. And as the wind sighs through the cliffs and the sand shifts silently above, one understands that some tombs do not simply preserve bodies, they preserve the stories that the living would rather forget, leaving behind a voice that refuses to be silenced, screaming softly in the dark. The world remembers Alexander the Great as a name etched into the bones of history, a conqueror whose ambition stretched from the shores of the Aegean to the deserts of India. Yet for all the maps, for all the cities that bore his mark, his final resting place remains a shadow, a secret that refuses to yield to time. How does a man who commanded empires vanish into the earth, leaving behind only whispers of gold, legend, and lost voices? Even now, the question carries weight, settling like dust in empty corridors of memory, as if the earth itself had swallowed both body and certainty. He died in Babylon in 323 BCE, a city humming with intrigue, opulence, and treachery. The air of Mesopotamia was thick with incense and a heavy, acrid tang of fever. For Alexander had fallen ill under mysterious circumstances. Ancient sources debate his cause of death: poison, malaria, typhoid, divine punishment, but none provide certainty. He was only 32, yet he bore the exhaustion of uncounted campaigns, the ghosts of countless cities leveled, and the weight of men who had followed him across mountains and rivers. His body, we are told, was preserved in honey, a substance meant to arrest decay and honor divinity. The process was meticulous, sacred, intended to transform the mortal into the eternal, the flesh into relic. The journey to his tomb, however, would become a legend in itself. Accounts speak of a grand procession, a city mourning its hero, carrying the sarcophagus on a golden bier. Priests, generals, and kings wept and paid tribute, yet somewhere along the path, Alexander's final resting place was lost to time. Some say his body was interred in Memphis, later moved to Alexandria. Roman emperors claimed to have visited the tomb. Julius Caesar reportedly wept before it. Augustus laid flowers upon the chest. Yet the site vanished, swallowed by earthquakes, by the expansion of cities, by the deliberate hands of men who feared the power that death might not fully contain. The sarcophagus itself is a riddle. Ancient descriptions hint at gold, alabaster, and treasures intended to assert divine kingship even in death. Yet modern scholars debate, was it honey-colored alabaster, polished and simple, or gilded with the spoils of conquest? Even the layout of Alexandria's early necropolises provides no clear clues. Temples and mosques now cover the land where the tomb was rumored to lie, and the sands have shifted enough to obscure every trace. Each generation that searches finds only tantalizing fragments, coins, inscriptions, tiny artifacts that could belong to Alexander or could belong to someone else entirely. What is haunting is not merely the disappearance of a body, but the vanishing of certainty itself. Alexander's absence forces reflection on the paradox of power. A man who could command nations cannot command the finality of death. His empire stretched beyond imagination, yet even that could not secure the permanence of his tomb. The missing sarcophagus becomes a symbol, a question unending. Can human ambition endure beyond the decay of flesh? Can memory replace presence when time erases even the grandest achievements? Even the tales of his funeral suggest cautionary omens. Honey preservation, elaborate rituals. The transfer of a body across a continent, these were gestures not only of respect, but of anxiety, a fear that even death could betray authority. And so the tomb remains empty, a space of infinite speculation, a monument to the ephemeral nature of power. Every excavation, every map, every rumor of discovery carries a weight of expectation. Yet the earth holds firm, withholding, silent, as if Alexander himself commands the secrecy from beyond the veil. There is poetry in this absence. Alexander's name drifts across the millennia, boundless and weightless, a legend not confined to stone or chamber. His body, whether destroyed, concealed, or claimed by the elements, is secondary to the imprint of his presence. The cities, the cultures, the boundaries rewritten by his campaigns. The tomb's emptiness becomes the ultimate testament. Mortality cannot contain ambition. Even in death, Alexander demands pursuit, fascination, reverence. And perhaps that is the final lesson of the empty sarcophagus, a reminder that some mysteries are eternal not because they are unsolvable, but because they are meant to endure beyond comprehension. Standing on the sands of Alexandria, imagining the path of a young king whose dreams encompass the world. One feels the pull of absence, the silent whisper of what is lost to the ages. Alexander is everywhere and nowhere, a shadow in history, a presence in imagination, and the earth keeps its secret faithfully. The tomb is empty, but the story remains alive, haunting, unclaimed, echoing through the centuries like the faintest drumbeat beneath the desert wind. Even now, when the sun sets over the ruins and the call of distant birds cuts through the heat, one feels the lingering pulse of a king who could conquer the world, but could not conquer oblivion. The empty sarcophagus is a reminder that history itself can be both monument and enigma, and that some stories are the vast, the restless, the ever rest quietly beneath the soil. Beneath the jagged slopes of Mount Lee, where mist coils like pale serpents around the forested hills, lies a tomb no living soul has dared to fully enter. Here rests Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, a man whose obsession with immortality shaped a dynasty and reshaped the very earth. He ruled with iron and fire, uniting warring states into a single empire. But he feared death more than rebellion, more than chaos, more than the weight of time itself. His tomb was not merely a grave, it was a subterranean kingdom, a shadowed reflection of the world above, intended to endure beyond centuries, beyond memory, beyond the reach of mortality. The emperor commanded its construction while still a boy, yet the scale of his ambition was unshakable. Tens of thousands of laborers toiled for decades, carving chambers, moving stone, weaving the labyrinthine corridors of what would become an underground empire. Ancient chronicles described rivers of flowing mercury, symbolic representations of the Yangtze and the Yellow River, intended to guide the emperor's soul through the afterlife. Celestial ceilings were said to shimmer with stars, constellations mapping the heavens in lacquered paint and gold leaf. Traps were woven into the architecture, crossing a threshold without ritual could spell death. Just as in life, every corridor was a testament to fear, power, and foresight, designed to preserve the emperor in the precise order he demanded. When Qin Shi Huang finally passed from the mortal world, he had consumed elixirs of mercury in a desperate pursuit of immortality, each draft perhaps accelerating the very death he sought to escape. The tomb itself was sealed, a fortress against looters, curiosity, and decay. Craftsmen who labored within were said to have been buried alive, their silence a safeguard, their deaths a secret oath to eternity. No written record survives of their fates, only the whispers of historians and the mercury-laced soil that modern testing confirms even today. The tomb was a machine of death and life, a palace of shadows beneath a mountain whose slopes seemed to guard themselves, unyielding, against the living. Outside, the world shifted, dynasties rose and fell, rivers changed course, armies swept through the land. Yet beneath the earth, the first emperor's domain remained untouched, a kingdom of stone, wood, and metal preserved against time. Even modern archaeology hesitates. The high mercury levels make entrance dangerous, a lethal testament to the emperor's foresight. Perhaps the tomb is unfinished, a reflection of Qin Shi Huang's own fear that eternity can never be truly contained. Perhaps it is complete, a trap for the unwary, a monument of warning. The living may never disturb what the dead have orchestrated. And still, despite its inaccessibility, the tomb speaks. The arrangement of the terracotta army, the careful placement of warriors, chariots, and servants, all suggest that Qin Shi Huang sought not only protection, but absolute control over death itself. The corridors whisper of devotion and coercion, of human endurance and subjugation, a delicate balance between reverence and terror. The emperor did not simply desire to rest, he sought dominion over life and afterlife alike. Standing before Mount Lee, one can almost feel the heartbeat of this hidden empire. The air is dense with memory, the earth vibrating with echoes of laborers' hands, the quiet curses of the buried, the meticulous commands of a ruler who defied mortality. The tomb is a pause in time, a preserved secret, a warning. Death may come for all, yet some attempt to resist it through design, ambition, and fear. Perhaps the greatest terror and the greatest lesson is that even in death, Qin Shi Huang commands. His tomb is not merely a burial, it is a story, a kingdom, a challenge to those who would claim knowledge they are not prepared to bear. The air above the mountain holds its breath, and the mountain itself seems alive, guarding secrets that humans cannot, and perhaps should not, possess. The emperor sleeps beneath rivers of mercury, stars frozen in ceilings of stone, and a silent army that will never march. Time has not claimed him, and the living are left to wonder, to ponder, to respect the cunning and fear that built a vault for eternity. In that quiet, the mind drifts to reflection. What does it mean to fear death so profoundly that one shapes it into architecture, into rivers of poison, into warriors carved to stand guard for millennia? Qin Shi Huang's tomb is a meditation on obsession, mortality, and control, a reminder that some tombs are not meant to be discovered. They are meant to endure, untouched, as monuments not to the living, but to the enduring, relentless will of those who sought to outlast life itself. And so, beneath the shadowed mountain, the emperor waits, preserved in silence, in fear, and in the permanence of legend. The winds of the Mongolian steppe carry stories older than the hills themselves, whispering across endless plains where the grass bends like water in the storm. Here, in this vast and unforgiving landscape, the grave of Genghis Khan, the great Khan who united the Mongol tribes and carved an empire across continents, remains one of the greatest enigmas of history. The man who commanded legions and reshaped the known world did not leave a tomb marked with banners or inscriptions. Instead, the earth itself swallowed him, hiding his resting place as fiercely as he had once hidden the strategies that toppled kingdoms. Genghis Khan died in 1227 in the mountains of western Mongolia. Scholars debate the exact cause: illness, wounds from battle, or perhaps an accident while hunting, but the precise location of his death, like his burial, is shrouded in deliberate secrecy. Legend says that the funeral was conducted with utmost care to erase his trail. Attendants killed all who witnessed the procession, rivers were redirected, and trees were felled to conceal paths. Horses trampled the earth, and even the burial party was silenced. Some accounts suggest that as many as 800 men who built the tomb were executed to preserve its secret. The Khan's empire would march forward, but his body would vanish, leaving no monument, no marker, only the soft whisper of the steppe wind across the land he once ruled. Archaeologists have searched for centuries, scouring ridges, valleys, and hidden gorges. Yet the tomb has eluded discovery. What has been found are fragments, ceramics, tools, and graves that hint at vast ceremonial sites, but none confirm the resting place of the man whose shadow still stretches across the plains. Even satellite imagery, modern technology, and careful excavation have failed to pierce the veil of secrecy that the Mongols wove so many centuries ago. Every attempt feels like trespassing on a sacred contract between the living and the dead. The steppe itself seems to resist disturbance, carrying a quiet warning in the hiss of wind and the rustle of grass. The myths surrounding Genghis Khan's burial carry an aura of the supernatural. Some say that the earth trembled as his body was laid to rest, that a storm struck the mountains, and that the clouds conspired to hide his tomb from human eyes. Others claim that a river was diverted to wash over the grave, ensuring that no trace of the body remained, that the landscape itself became guardian, sacrificial and unyielding. The Khan, who had ruled with absolute authority in life, continues to command even in death, ensuring that none may claim the finality of his mortal form. What is haunting is not merely the secrecy, but the intentionality of it. Genghis Khan's tomb was never meant for admiration. It was a cipher, a test of respect and patience for any who would dare search for it. It is a place where the living are reminded of the ephemeral nature of power, of the impossibility of mastering death, even for the greatest of conquerors. His missing resting place is both defiance and poetry, a statement that some men are too vast to be captured by stone or inscription, that even burial can become legend rather than fact. In the endless horizon of the Mongolian steppe, one can almost feel the pulse of history beneath the soil. The grass bends, the wind whispers, and the mountains hold their secrets close. Genghis Khan's spirit seems to wander, not as a shadow, but as a presence, watching the empire he built and the generations that still tremble at his name. He is absent, yet everywhere, lost, yet eternal. Every footstep across the plains is a quiet acknowledgement of a life that will never be fully contained. Perhaps the ultimate terror and the ultimate fascination is that the tomb will likely never be found. It is a meditation on control, mortality, and the limits of human knowledge. Even the most relentless seekers cannot compel the earth to reveal what the Khan has hidden. In that absence, there is reflection. Some tombs are more than resting places, they are lessons, warnings, and echoes of lives so powerful that they transcend even death. And so, beneath the Mongolian sky, where stars scatter like silver sparks across the dark velvet of night, the great Khan sleeps, his secrets interwoven with the land itself. He commands silently, without voice or presence, a reminder that the most profound mysteries are not discovered, they are preserved, felt, and revered. The wind moves across the steppe, carrying whispers of a man whose life reshaped the world and whose death remains an eternal, unbroken enigma. The tomb of Genghis Khan is not lost, it is intentionally hidden, a sacred enigma, and perhaps the greatest story of absence ever told. Beneath the restless waters of the Mediterranean, near the golden shores of Alexandria, lie tombs swallowed by the sea, graves of pharaohs whose names have drifted into legend. The waves move endlessly over them, brushing against stone and mosaic as though attempting to erase time itself. And yet the secrets of these submerged chambers refuse to be silenced. Here, in this city of scholars and sailors, Cleopatra's dynasty once ruled, their power measured in marble, gold, and whispered conspiracies. The sea now guards their resting places, a vault of mystery beneath salt water and shadow, where history dissolves into currents and memory is preserved in fragments. Alexandria, the jewel of the Ptolemaic kingdom, was a city of ambition and intrigue. Palaces rose along the coast, libraries housed the wisdom of the known world, and the harbor hummed with merchants, soldiers, and spies. It was here that Cleopatra VII, last queen of Egypt, wove her influence with diplomacy, cunning, and love that would shape the fate of empires. Her death in 30 BCE, after the fall of Mark Antony and the encroachment of Rome, marked not merely the end of a dynasty, but the sealing of secrets meant to vanish beneath the waves. Her tomb, reportedly magnificent, has eluded discovery. Ancient accounts hint at chambers lined with gold, adorned with treasures of the Nile, and filled with sacred objects meant to guide her soul into eternity. Yet the land itself seems to have betrayed her, sinking the tomb into the waters of the harbor, where it rests, impervious to the centuries. Divers and archaeologists have scoured the coastline, revealing fragments of columns, broken statues, and traces of mosaics that may have belonged to royal tombs. Some discoveries suggest ceremonial burials, coffins with inscriptions, or jars containing artifacts intended to preserve memory. Yet no tomb has yielded certainty. The sea keeps its silence, offering only glimpses of what lies beneath. Currents conceal, sandbursts bury, and salt corrodes what should have lasted. Cleopatra's resting place is a paradox, known to exist, yet forever absent. A ghostly monument to ambition, love, and the ephemeral nature of power. Legends suggest that Cleopatra herself ordered measures to protect the tomb from desecration. Protective spells, guardians, and secret entrances may have ensured that only the goddess Isis, or the gods of the Nile, could witness her eternal slumber. Perhaps the treasures that once lined her chambers lie in scattered ruins beneath silt and stone, golden fragments drifting like starlight in the currents. Some scholars whisper that the tomb was deliberately sunk, a symbolic return to the Nile from which the Ptolemies drew both life and legitimacy. The idea of intentional burial beneath the waves reflects a civilization attuned to the rhythm of water and death, blending mortality with myth. Even more haunting is the uncertainty surrounding the fate of those interred with her. Did servants, priests, and advisors accompany her into the depths, as Egyptian custom might dictate? Or did the chaos of Rome's conquest leave them unclaimed, lost to water and time? The sea itself seems to remember them, shifting sand and shell to form an eternal, ever-changing tomb. Diving among the ruins, one cannot help but feel the weight of eyes unseen, a presence watching from beneath the waters, a reminder that even in death, rulers wield influence. The submerged tombs of Alexandria challenge understanding of permanence. Here is a place where human ambition is at the mercy of natural forces, where memory is fragile, and where history is layered like sediment under the waves. Cleopatra's legacy is not merely in her politics or her love affairs, but in the deliberate obscurity of her final resting place, a meditation on mortality, secrecy, and the human desire to control remembrance. The currents may erase, but they cannot wholly silence. And so, standing at the edge of the harbor, gazing into waters that shimmer and churn, one feels the profound pull of absence. The tomb sleeps beneath the waves, a hidden chamber of gold and shadow, guarded by the eternal rhythm of the sea. Cleopatra is gone, yet she is everywhere, in the stories of sailors, in the fragments archaeologists uncover, in the whispering tide that laps against the shore. The ocean holds her secret with solemn reverence, a watery eternity where history and legend entwine, a reminder that some tombs are not lost, they are deliberately, irrevocably hidden, waiting for those who respect the weight of time and the silence of the dead. Beneath the surface, the city sleeps, the pharaohs dream, and the sea murmurs a lullaby older than empires. It is a lullaby of ambition, of love, of death, and of secrets that refuse to be silenced. The sunken tombs of Alexandria are more than ruins, they are a meditation on absence, an invitation to contemplate the delicate, unyielding boundary between life and eternity, between what is remembered and what is intentionally forgotten. In the mist-laden marshes of northern Europe, where reeds sway like sentinels and the water shimmers with the reflection of a sun that rarely warms the soil, lie the remains of the bog bodies, men, women, and children preserved in peat for thousands of years, their flesh unnaturally intact, their hair still flowing, their skin like leather that whispers under gloved hands. These are not tombs carved from stone, nor chambers sealed with gold. They are graves of earth and water, where death and preservation entwine in a secret ritual that time cannot fully explain. Every body is a silent testament to a world that balanced reverence with fear, life with sacrifice, and humanity with the inexorable power of nature. The bogs of Denmark, Ireland, Germany, and the Netherlands were once sacred landscapes, where tribes offered tribute to gods of fertility, war, and the underworld. Here, the dead were not merely buried, they were delivered into a liminal space, suspended between life and death, earth and water. The preservation is uncanny. Acidic peat, low oxygen, and cold temperatures arrested decay, leaving ligaments, fingernails, and even stomach contents intact. Modern analysis reveals traces of meals, sometimes last drinks of mead, and the twisted posture suggests violent strangulation, stabbing, blunt force trauma, yet never with the intent to destroy. Each death is a story frozen in time, a deliberate act performed with intention, ritual, and meaning lost to the centuries. Among the most haunting is the Tollen man, found in Denmark, his body curled in fetal repose, rope still around his neck, a placid expression on his face that belies the violence of his final moments. Did he die as a criminal, a traitor, a sacrifice to appease gods, or a victim of political manipulation? The exact reason remains unknowable. His last meal gruel of seeds and grains was consumed with care, a final act of sustenance before the bog claimed him. The silence of the marsh is profound. It holds the memory of his death in its waters and peat, a consciousness arrested by both nature and human ritual. Other bodies, like Lindo Man, reveal even more intimate horrors. Clues suggest beatings, garroting, and throat slitting, their postures hinting at struggle and submission. The bogs were not merely cemeteries. They were theaters of power, belief, and the sacred enforcement of societal order. Perhaps these were offerings, punishments, or warnings. Perhaps they were both. The peat preserves not only flesh, but intent, leaving modern observers suspended between fascination and unease, confronted by a mortality so deliberate it is almost ceremonial. The bogs themselves amplify the mystery. Walking among them, one senses a world attuned to the rhythm of water and silence. Mist rises from the surface in slow, curling tendrils. Every step threatens to disturb centuries of sediment. Every movement whispers with memory. The dead are present, yet inaccessible. Their stories are both legible and opaque, as if the landscape conspires to keep their secrets while offering just enough to tantalize. The earth has become both tomb and witness, a medium through which death communicates with the living in shadowed, quiet fragments. It is in this preservation that the bog bodies acquire their haunting voice. They are not tombs of grandeur or splendor. They are intimate, visceral, and unsettling. They remind us that death can be deliberate, that ritual can be violent, and that the human desire to honor, punish, or appease can intertwine in ways that defy comprehension. Standing among the reeds, listening to the water lapping softly against the moss, one feels the presence of those who were sacrificed, executed, or offered, and senses the enduring power of landscapes to record human action long after memory has faded. Perhaps the most profound lesson of the bogs is the intersection of mortality, belief, and the natural world. These bodies were claimed not by tombs, stone, or monuments, but by earth itself, preserved in ways both tender and cruel. Their silence is a lullaby, their stillness a warning, their existence a bridge to a world that revered and feared the boundary between life and death. And so, the bogs whisper across centuries. The Tollen man smiles faintly beneath the moss. Lindo Man holds his secret beneath the still waters, and countless others wait, suspended. Between worlds, they remind us that some tombs are not built by hands, but by the patient, preserving earth itself, a living monument to the fragile and terrible beauty of mortality, ritual, and human intention. Here, in the silence of peat and mist, death lingers not as absence, but as presence, eternal, precise, and hauntingly eloquent. Beneath the rolling plains of Xi'an, where the morning fog clings to the earth like a shroud, lies a silent army, frozen not in bronze or iron, but in clay, awaiting a war that will never come. The Terracotta Army is not merely a tomb, it is a cosmos of devotion, terror, and foresight. A vast subterranean kingdom built to serve the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, beyond death. Here, in these dark chambers beneath the soil, thousands of warriors stand in eternal vigil, their faces unique, their formations precise, as if each soldier possesses the consciousness of the man he once represented. Yet the emperor they serve is distant, his body hidden in mercury-laden chambers still untouched, his empire above alive, his kingdom below an immovable testament to obsession. Construction began during Qin Shi Huang's life, a monumental endeavor spanning decades, with laborers numbering in the tens of thousands. Clay was molded into warriors, generals, horses, and chariots, each figure imbued with individuality, as though the emperor demanded that even inanimate objects mirror the complexity of the living. Ancient texts describe workshops where artisans worked in silence, crafting armor, weapons, and ranks with meticulous care, while the emperor's own fears of mortality guided their hands. The army was not decorative. It was functional, symbolic, and terrifying. It was intended to accompany the emperor, to protect him, and to enforce his rule in the realm of the dead. When the emperor finally died, the army was sealed in darkness, hidden beneath wooden roofs and layers of earth. Time has shifted, cracked, and sometimes betrayed these chambers. Yet the clay soldiers remain remarkably preserved. Some are discovered with traces of paint, suggesting that in life and afterlife, color was essential to the illusion of vitality. Others bear weapons and tools, careful replicas of instruments meant to enforce rule. The scale is staggering. Tens of thousands of figures arrayed in battalions, formations, and defensive ranks, a tangible reflection of power and fear intertwined. Modern excavation reveals both grandeur and horror. The army rests atop rivers of mercury, believed to map the heavens and protect the emperor from decay or desecration. Traces of the elixir the emperor drank in life to prolong existence seep into the soil, making the chambers toxic, unapproachable. Even today, the earth resists intrusion. The air of the tomb is heavy with memory, the subtle scent of clay and iron mingling with centuries of silence. One imagines the laborers pressed into service, their sweat and toil fused with the very figures they crafted, their lives partially absorbed into the empire they built. The Terracotta Army is also a meditation on mortality. Each soldier frozen in mid-step embodies fear of death and desire for control. Their blank eyes seem to witness centuries of change above ground, empires rising and falling, the living forgetting the emperor whose presence they enforce. The chambers are a dialogue between life and death, between human ambition and the inevitability of decay. No victory, no conquest, no wealth can alter the fate of the living yet in clay. The emperor commanded eternity, and yet the army carries secrets beyond the obvious. Some chambers remain unopened, unexamined. The emperor's personal quarters, his sarcophagus, and the rivers of mercury above them remain untouched. Perhaps it is fear of the curse, perhaps of the poison, perhaps of respect for the vision itself. Time becomes another sentinel, preserving not only the figures, but the intention behind them. The tomb's design reflects the paradox of ambition, that even as one seeks immortality, control over life and death remains incomplete. Walking among the terracotta warriors is to enter a world where stillness is violence, and patience is reverence. The air hums with echoes of labor, of obedience, of ambition transmuted into clay. Their silent formation is both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a reminder that the dead can command even when flesh has decayed. It is a kingdom without life, yet vibrating with the consciousness of creation itself. Perhaps the greatest truth of the Terracotta Army is that some tombs are not merely resting places. They are statements, warnings, and meditations frozen in earth. Qin Shi Huang's vision survives through clay, mercury, and silence, reminding the living that ambition endures in forms they may not expect. The army marches endlessly through time, unseen by eyes not meant to witness, preserved by earth, silence, and devotion. It is a monument not just to the emperor, but to the human desire to dominate death itself. A cautionary tale carved in clay, standing vigilant in the subterranean night, waiting for eternity to answer its question. Even now, beneath the soil and mist of Xi'an, the army stands, the air thick with history, the earth humming softly beneath the feet of visitors. Time has not dimmed them, nor has it silenced the pulse of intent embedded in their creation. They are eternal sentinels of ambition, mortality, and the inescapable weight of human will, whispering to all who pause in reverence and awe, teaching that some tombs are more than tombs, they are immortal voices, waiting patiently in shadow and stone, beneath the sun-scorched plains of southern Mesopotamia, where the Euphrates and Tigris once met in a ribbon of fertile land, lie tombs older than the written word, silent kingdoms of the ancient city of Ur. Here, in the cradle of civilization, kings were not merely buried, they were interred with entire households, treasures, and instruments of power, as if the afterlife demanded that authority be absolute, uninterrupted, eternal. The tombs of Ur, excavated in the 1920s and 1930s by Leonard Woolley, revealed not just stone and clay, but echoes of life and death entwined, a haunting glimpse of rituals that are as exquisite as they are terrifying. The royal cemetery of Ur stretches beneath the desert, each grave a microcosm of a civilization obsessed with permanence. The wealth and splendor found in the tomb's gold, lapis lazuli, carnelian, and shall reflect the ambition and artistry of Sumerian kings and queens. Yet the most unsettling discoveries were not the treasures themselves, but the bodies, arranged with a precision that speaks of devotion, ritual, and inexorable cruelty. Servants, musicians, and attendants were buried alongside their rulers, some with evidence of strangulation, others with signs of sedation or poisoning, ensuring that the king's needs in life would extend seamlessly into death. The line between loyalty and sacrifice blurs, leaving a chilling impression of power exercised beyond the veil of mortality. Perhaps the most famous tomb is that of Queen Pwavi. Her body rested in an ornate chamber, adorned with gold headdress, lapis beads, and a robe threaded with precious metals. Around her, attendants lay arranged with ceremonial precision, their hands folded, eyes closed in eternal service. The detail is staggering. Drinking vessels, musical instruments, and furniture accompany the dead as if to sustain life itself beyond the grave. Yet the methods of their deaths hint at a world where devotion demanded finality. Woolley uncovered evidence suggesting some attendants may have been drugged, others strangled, each act deliberate and ritualized, a testament to the total control of the elite over life and death. The tombs themselves tell stories beyond the individual. They are records of hierarchy, fear, and the human desire to preserve power. Even the simplest grave offers insights into Sumerian beliefs. The soul, it seems, required companionship, obedience, and material wealth to survive. The repeated use of lavish burials for the elite also suggests a culture enthralled by spectacle and permanence, one willing to intertwine death and ritual in ways that challenge modern sensibilities. Walking among the ruins of Ur today, one feels both awe and unease. The desert wind carries echoes of drums, voices, and lamentations, imagined yet palpable, as though the earth remembers the ceremonial deaths performed within its soil. The treasures glint in the imagination even when buried beneath layers of sand, and the silent attendants seem to watch, guardians of secrets no longer understood. These tombs do not merely preserve bodies, they preserve intent, hierarchy, and the shadowed logic of a civilization that demanded obedience beyond the grave. The royal cemetery of Ur reminds us that death is never neutral. Here, mortality was a stage upon which devotion, power, and fear played out, leaving behind a landscape frozen in time. The kings and queens sleep beneath earth thick with memory, their attendants frozen in loyalty, their treasures shimmering faintly in the imagination. Every tomb is a meditation on human ambition, mortality, and the cost of preserving authority across eternity. Even now, as the desert shifts and the sun bleaches the soil, the tombs whisper. They speak of lives claimed for kings, of rituals so precise that they echo through millennia, of power that stretch beyond the corporeal. Ur teaches that some tombs are more than resting places, they are moral and spiritual exercises, spaces where the living, the dead, and the ambitions in between converge, suspended in a haunting, eternal vigil. High in the mist-cloaked Andes, where jagged peaks pierce the clouds and rivers carve silver paths through emerald valleys, lie tombs of the Inca kings, lost to history and hidden from mortal eyes. Here, the air is thin, cold, and reverent, heavy with the scent of earth, stone, and ancient incense, a threshold where the living brush against the memory of empire. The Incas, masters of stone and sky, believed in the continuation of authority beyond flesh, in the sacred lineage of kings preserved not only in memory, but in ritual and construction. Their tombs were not merely graves, they were sanctuaries, bridges between the earth and the divine, designed to endure earthquakes, time, and the decay of civilization itself. The Incas practiced mummification with meticulous care, preserving rulers in seated positions that mirrored their living authority. Gold masks, intricate textiles, and offerings surrounded the bodies, while the elite were accompanied by attendants, servants, and sacrificial victims, all chosen to maintain the spiritual hierarchy of the afterlife. The dead were not inert. They remained active participants in society, consulted through ritual, revered through ceremony, and occasionally even dressed and fed by the living, their influence extending across generations. The Sapa Inca's death did not end his authority, it transformed it, intertwining the physical and spiritual worlds in a ritual dance that required both devotion and obedience. Yet the arrival of the Spanish conquest in the 16th century shattered this continuity. Tombs were ransacked, mummies burned, and treasures plundered. Many royal bodies vanished into legend, their resting places deliberately hidden by priests and servants to prevent desecration. Stories persist of secret caves and mountain sanctuaries, where kings of the Inca lineage still slumber, guarded by natural fortresses, snowstorms, and the loyalty of spirits. Archaeologists have uncovered fragments, ceremonial tools, textiles, gold ornaments, but the central tombs, where the kings sit in eternal vigilance, remain elusive, swallowed by altitude, vegetation, and deliberate secrecy. Among these mysteries is the famed mummy of the last Sapa Inca, Atahualpa's predecessor, hidden somewhere in the high valleys near Cusco. Some accounts describe elaborate tunnels leading to subterranean chambers carved from solid rock, designed to withstand both natural disaster and human intrusion. The bodies were laid upon stone thrones, wrapped in textiles dyed with rare pigments, and positioned to gaze toward the sacred peaks that framed their cities. Offerings of food, coca leaves, and gold accompanied them, ensuring they could govern the living and the land even in death. Yet the precise locations of these tombs were deliberately erased from memory, a protective act meant to preserve dignity and sovereignty against invaders. The haunting of these tombs lies not only in their concealment, but in their continued presence. In the spiritual imagination of the Andes, indigenous traditions tell of spirits wandering the mountains, of mummies consulted during harvests and crises, and of kings whose authority has never waned. Modern travelers speak of shadows glimpsed at twilight, of whispers in wind tunnels that echo across cliff faces. Even the unearthing of minor artifacts is treated with ritual care, a tacit acknowledgement that some tombs are not meant to be fully disturbed, their secrets preserved in respect, fear, and awe. The tombs of the Inca kings are meditations on power, mortality, and the persistence of culture. They remind us that death is not always the end, but a transformation of presence, a continuation of influence, and a covenant between the living and the dead. Every peak, every hidden valley, every stone altar is an unbroken testament to a civilization that understood the sacred weight of authority, even when faced with conquest. These tombs exist in a liminal space where myth, history, and spirituality converge, waiting patiently beneath layers of soil, snow, and mist. And so, high above the valleys, where clouds curl round peaks like smoke from eternal fires, the lost Inca kings wait. Their tombs, hidden and unreachable, are monuments not merely to flesh and gold, but to the enduring will of civilization, to the careful weaving of memory, ritual, and sovereignty. Standing amidst these mountains, one senses the pulse of the past, the invisible presence of rulers who continue to watch, govern, and inspire, teaching that some tombs are not lost, they are preserved, sacred, and eternal. Along the rugged coastlines of Scandinavia, where fjords carve deep into the land and the wind carries the scent of salt and pine, lie tombs of Viking chieftains, shrouded in mist, legend, and the echo of battle cries long silenced. Here, the dead were honored not merely with burial, but with a ritual designed to project their power beyond the threshold of life, into the boundless realms of myth and memory. The tombs are carved from earth, timber, and stone, some beneath burial mounds, others within the hulls of ships, fashioned to carry their occupants across both land and afterlife in a voyage unbroken by mortality. The Vikings, warriors and navigators of the North, understood death as both continuation and conquest. Chieftains were often interred within ships, their bodies adorned with weapons, armor, and treasures plundered or gifted, and surrounded by attendants or sacrificial animals meant to serve them in the next world. The Oseberg and Goxton ship burials uncovered centuries later revealed intricate woodwork, textiles, and even beds and utensils, emphasizing that life's luxuries, authority, and hierarchy were to extend beyond mortal existence. Yet the most unsettling discoveries were those indicating human sacrifice women and servants laid to rest beside their leaders. sometimes strangled, sometimes poisoned, their obedience preserved in death, as if to secure the chieftain's power for eternity. Among these silent vessels is the tomb of a chieftain whose name is lost to time, but whose presence remains palpable in the curve of the ship, the angle of the oars, and the careful arrangement of weapons and artifacts. Bones tell of stature, battle, and sudden death. Richly adorned combs, ceremonial drinking horns, and bronze fittings survive, suggesting a man who lived surrounded by luxury and command, and whose final voyage into the afterlife was orchestrated with equal grandeur. The sea, mountains, and forests of the north became witnesses, preserving the ritual and amplifying its mystery. The tombs themselves are mirrors of Viking society, a delicate equilibrium of reverence, violence, and performance. Life and death intertwined in ceremonial precision. Death was neither feared nor ignored. It was orchestrated, controlled, and elevated into the realm of legend. Every burial mound, every ship-shaped grave, every arrangement of goods carries a message of dominance, permanence, and spiritual continuity. They remind the living that authority survives in memory, ritual, and in the earth itself, where the chieftains lie in silent command. Even today, the tombs exude an almost tactile presence. Standing beside a mound or peering into a ship burial chamber, one feels the weight of centuries, the quiet breaths of the long dead, and the lingering sense of a leader who continues to govern through myth. Archaeologists and travelers alike speak of an eerie stillness, a pause in time where the living are invited to witness the interplay of power, devotion, and mortality. The dead are not simply absent, they are present, commanding attention, reverence, and humility. The Viking tombs are also lessons in impermanence and secrecy. Many burial sites were deliberately concealed, built into forests or beneath mounds designed to blend with the landscape. Looters and the ravages of time have destroyed some, yet those that remain still exude authority, and even their partial discovery is a glimpse into a carefully constructed dialogue between life, death, and legacy. These tombs ask of the living an acknowledgement of mortality, obedience, and the subtle art of memory preservation. The haunting truth is that power, even in death, demands witnesses. These chieftains continue to hold dominion not through flesh, but through ritual, myth, and careful preservation. The wind across the fjords whispers their names, whether spoken or imagined, carrying echoes of longboats and battle cries. Their tombs are not merely graves, they are statements of permanence, of authority, and of the intricate bond between the living and the dead, forged in blood, wood, and ceremony. As the sun sets over the Scandinavian coast, painting the fjords in gold and shadow, the Viking chieftains remain, their silent ships resting in earth and memory. They are eternal travelers, rulers beyond life, and sentinels of history, teaching that some tombs are not meant to yield their secrets easily. They exist to remind us that death can be deliberate, ceremonial, and powerful, and that some stories, once begun, are never truly finished. Deep in the jungles of Cambodia, where the air hangs thick with humidity and the cries of unseen creatures echo through towering trees, lie the hidden tombs of the Khmer kings, swallowed by vines, shadow, and centuries of devotion. These tombs are not carved of stone alone, nor marked with gold. They are sanctuaries of power, entwined with temples, canals, and the sacred geometry of Angkor itself, built to bind the divine, the earthly, and the eternal into a single, unyielding vision. Here, the kings of the Khmer Empire were not merely interred, they were transformed into timeless figures, rulers of both life and spirit, whose resting places reflect a civilization obsessed with cosmic order and human mastery of the divine. The Khmer kings ruled during an age of grandeur, where the temples of Angkor rose from the earth like mountains sculpted by devotion and ambition. Their reigns were marked by engineering marvels, canals that controlled water and harvest, and temples that mirrored the sacred Mount Meru, home of the gods. Within these structures, the tombs were carefully concealed, sometimes beneath floors, within hidden chambers, or behind intricately carved walls. Kings were laid to rest with offerings of gold, silver, and precious stones, while incense, oils, and ritual paraphernalia surrounded them, ensuring that their presence persisted in both the mortal and divine realms. Their corpses were treated with care, sometimes mummified or preserved with chemicals, yet always hidden from prying eyes, the secrecy as sacred as the tombs themselves. Some of the most mysterious burials lie beneath Angkor Wat and its lesser-known neighboring temples, where subterranean chambers have been glimpsed but never fully excavated. Archaeologists have uncovered traces of sacrificial rites, including servants and animals buried alongside rulers. reinforcing the continuation of authority and ritual after death. The precision and planning of these tombs suggest a society deeply attuned to the interplay of life, death, and cosmic balance. Every placement of stone, every layer of sand, every glyph carved into walls is a measure of devotion and control, a statement that death is not an end but a passage, carefully guided and preserved. The jungle itself becomes part of the tomb, a living guardian that conceals as much as it reveals. Vines drape over stone, moss carpets floors, and roots pry apart walls, both preserving and transforming the spaces over centuries. Explorers and archaeologists speak of a palpable presence when entering these hidden chambers, a sense of reverence and caution as though the spirits of the kings themselves guide or judge intruders. Even the faintest footstep seems amplified in the sacred silence, echoing against walls carved with myth, devotion, and power. Some legends say the king's spirits remain active within the tombs, influencing water flows, harvests, and the well-being of their descendants. Others claim that protective curses were inscribed in hidden chambers, warning against desecration. The Khmer tombs, unlike stone monuments, are dynamic, entwined with nature, ritual, and the passage of time. They are places where the boundary between life and death is permeable, where authority and devotion extend beyond mortal comprehension, and where the jungle itself enforces the sanctity of the king's eternal rule. To witness these tombs, even from afar, is to confront the weight of civilization, mortality, and devotion intertwined. They are not merely graves, they are active sanctuaries, statements of human ambition, and reminders that some power endures in secrecy, mystery, and shadow. The hidden tombs of the Khmer kings are lessons etched in stone and vine, that mortality can be ritualized, authority can transcend flesh, and that the forest keeps its secrets with patience and precision. As the evening descends and shadows stretch across temple walls, one senses the presence of these kings in the whisper of leaves, in the tremor of roots through stone, in the silent, eternal gaze of the chambers below. They sleep in hidden sanctuaries, yet they remain sovereign, a reminder that some tombs are not simply resting places, they are living monuments to ambition, ritual, and the eternal negotiation between the mortal and the divine. In the heart of the jungle, the kings wait, silent, eternal, and unseen, their secrets preserved for those who dare to listen. Beneath the rolling hills and misty valleys of ancient Etruria, in what is now modern Tuscany, lie tombs that whisper of a civilization older than Rome itself, guardians of secrets almost forgotten by time. The Etruscans, enigmatic masters of art, ritual, and engineering, built burial chambers carved deep into tuff and limestone, hidden beneath the earth as if to defy intrusion. These were not mere graves, they were miniature cities of the dead, filled with painted frescoes, carved sarcophagi, and treasures meant to preserve the identity, wealth, and influence of rulers long after their mortal breath had faded. Every tomb is a silent story, a doorway to a world where mortality and myth entwined. The Etruscans flourished between the 8th and 3rd centuries BCE, a culture steeped in ritual, augury, and intricate social hierarchies. Kings and nobles were interred with care, their tombs designed to mirror their earthly lives, complete with furniture, clothing, vessels, jewelry, and sometimes the bones of servants or animals, ensuring that life in the afterworld would continue in a pattern familiar and controlled. Frescoes depict feasts, dances, and ceremonies, their pigments preserved in shadowed chambers, conveying joy and power alongside the quiet inevitability of death. Every wall, every carving, every urn is a meditation on existence, an assertion that the dead continue to rule, entertain, and observe, even as time erodes the living world above. Some tombs, like the Regolini Galassi or the Banatacha necropolis, reveal the scale and sophistication of these burial practices. Long corridors lead to chambers adorned with painted walls depicting banquets and processions, the figures frozen in celebration, defiance, or reverence. Jewelry, gold fibulae, and intricate metalwork survive, gleaming faintly beneath the centuries, testaments to skill and devotion. Yet the tombs also speak of mystery. Many inscriptions are undeciphered, and the purpose of certain symbols, rituals, and sacrificial practices remains unknown. Did the Etruscan rulers fear death, or did they see it as a continuation of authority? Perhaps it was both a negotiation between mortality and legacy, secrecy and revelation. Among the more haunting discoveries are tombs that suggest sudden, violent deaths, or perhaps political intrigue. Skeletons arranged in positions of distress, subtle traces of trauma, and objects deliberately broken or altered hint at lives, and deaths intertwined with power struggles, betrayal, or ritual purification. Unlike the grandeur of Egyptian pyramids or the scale of Qin Shi Huang's tomb, the Etruscan burials feel intimate, human, and profoundly eerie. The dead are close, their presence palpable, their gaze imagined through the painted eyes of frescoes and the silent assembly of artifacts. Walking through the necropolises today, one senses the weight of generations, the vigilance of rulers who continue to assert presence even in absence. The air is thick with history, dust, and the faint echo of music or ceremony imagined through centuries of silence. The tombs do not merely preserve remains. They preserve intention, ritual, and an enduring message that authority, devotion, and memory extend far beyond the body. The dead are observers, participants, and custodians of a civilization that thrived in shadow and secrecy, teaching that some tombs are less about rest and more about persistence. The Etruscan tombs remind us that mortality is not an erasure, but a transformation. Here, kings continue to feast, dance, and command in silence, enclosed in chambers carved from the living earth, preserved by stone, shadow, and memory. Their presence is delicate yet commanding, a quiet assertion that death need not diminish power, only alter its expression. Some tombs are not lost, for their influence endures, inscribed in paint, stone, and ritual, waiting for the eyes willing to see, the minds willing to imagine, and the hearts capable of reverence. As dusk settles over the Tuscan hills, the wind whispers through cypress and olive, carrying the weight of centuries, of rulers who refuse finality, and of tombs that remain ever present, silent yet eloquent. The Etruscan kings sleep in hidden chambers beneath the soil, their treasures, frescoes, and companions still attentive to the living world. And in that silence, one can feel the profound truth. Some tombs are not merely resting places, they are enduring conversations between life and death, between authority and eternity, and between the unseen and those who seek to understand the past without disturbing its sanctity. Along the sun-scorched cliffs and rolling sands of Nubia, where the Nile winds like a silver serpent through the arid landscape, lie tombs that have guarded their secrets for millennia. These are the tombs of the Nubian pharaohs, rulers of a kingdom that flourished to the south of Egypt, whose power and culture rivaled that of the Nile's northern civilizations. Unlike the grand pyramids of Giza, these tombs are smaller, built of stone and mud brick, yet they pulse with a quiet, commanding presence, their chambers filled with relics, inscriptions, and the lingering shadow of kings long dead. The Nubians, fierce and devout, understood death as continuation, and their tombs were designed not merely to hold bodies, but to preserve legacy, power, and divine authority in a land where sand could erase all else. The Kingdom of Kush, as Nubia was often called, thrived along the Nile for centuries, its rulers both warriors and priests, its cities and temples reflecting a sophisticated understanding of architecture, art, and ritual. When a king died, elaborate ceremonies were conducted to ensure his transition into the afterlife. Royal tombs were often carved deep into cliffs, hidden from sight, and adorned with painted reliefs depicting gods, battles, and ceremonial rites. The walls carried spells, hieroglyphs, and images of deities meant to guide the pharaoh in death, ensuring that his authority continued beyond flesh and time. Some tombs contain multiple chambers, each filled with treasures, vessels, jewelry, and sometimes the remains of attendants, sacrificed or offered to serve their master in the afterlife. Archaeologists have uncovered coffins richly adorned with gold and lapis, masks that echo the serene, powerful visage of the deceased, and inscriptions that hint at politics, conquest, and divine negotiation. Yet, many tombs remain unexcavated or destroyed, hidden beneath shifting sands, their treasures swallowed by time, their occupants' stories known only through fragments and speculation. One of the most haunting aspects of Nubian tombs is the mystery surrounding the deaths of some kings. Skeletons reveal injuries, signs of sudden death, or unusual burial positions. Some tombs suggest hurried interment, perhaps due to conflict, disease, or political intrigue. Others display deliberate concealment, entrances blocked with stone, passages hidden behind false walls. Unlike Egyptian tombs designed to awe, Nubian tombs often feel intimate, secretive, protective, a kingdom's message that the dead are sovereign, their privacy as important as their grandeur. The landscape itself becomes part of the tomb's protection. Desert wind shifts sands over entrances, and the cliff's jagged faces obscure chambers from casual observation. Sunlight rarely penetrates these resting places, leaving them in eternal twilight, their frescoes, treasures, and mummies suspended between memory and oblivion. The silence of the tombs is profound. Standing within them, one can imagine the soft echoes of ceremonies long vanished, the hushed prayers of priests, and the presence of kings who still exert dominion over their domain. The Nubian tombs teach a lesson in humility, secrecy, and reverence. Death was neither surrender nor erasure, it was transformation, carefully guided by ritual, protected by architecture, and preserved by the patient desert. These tombs are not merely graves. They are statements of sovereignty, devotion, and resilience. Even as centuries pass, the kings remain, guardians of their own stories, waiting in the shadows, silent but unyielding. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Nile's rippling surface, the tombs of Nubia whisper across the sands. They speak of rulers who refuse to be forgotten, of treasures hidden from plunderers, of lives intertwined with faith and power. In the shifting dunes and jagged cliffs, one senses the eternal presence of kings, their authority unbroken, their secrets preserved in shadow and stone. Some tombs are not lost, they are hidden, sacred, and eternal, waiting patiently for those who approach with respect, silence, and awe. Amid the mist-shrouded mountains and sacred forests of Japan, where ancient cedar and pine whisper with the wind and the soil itself seems hallowed, lie the tombs of emperors whose names echo faintly through time. These are the coffin, the monumental burial mounds of the Yamato rulers, some shaped like keyholes, others like silent hills, built not to be entered casually, but to stand as eternal markers of authority, ritual, and divine connection. Here, death was not the end, but a passage, a transformation, a continuation of imperial presence in a land where heaven, earth, and ruler were intertwined. The Yamato emperors reigned during the Kofun period, roughly the 3rd to 7th century CE, a time when the foundations of Japanese statehood were being forged. Burial practices reflected a sacred geometry, with mounds oriented toward celestial markers, surrounded by moats, and filled with treasures meant to accompany the emperor into the afterlife. Bronze mirrors, ceremonial weapons, clay Hanawa figurines, and gold ornaments were placed with intention, each item a symbol of power, protection, and spiritual authority. The Hanawa, shaped as warriors, animals, or attendants, stood as sentinels around the mounts, silent witnesses to both ceremony and eternity. Yet, the kofun were designed with secrecy and preservation in mind. Many remain unexcavated even today, guarded by law, legend, and the deliberate design of the imperial household. Ancient chronicles hint at sacred prohibitions, curses, and spiritual protections to deter intrusion, reinforcing the idea that these tombs were not for the living to disturb, but for the ruler to inhabit beyond death. The largest, Daisen Kofun in Osaka, believed to belong to Emperor Nintoku, spans hundreds of meters, surrounded by moats and forests, a monumental testament to authority and enduring presence. Yet its inner chambers remain untouched, a mystery preserved for centuries. Archaeologists have found smaller mounds revealing fragments of Hanawa, bronze mirrors, and ritual objects. Yet the precise methods of interment, the location of sarcophagi, and the full extent of ceremonial practices remain elusive. Some tombs suggest sudden or ritualized deaths, while others hint at political consolidation, where burial was as much about securing power in death as it was about honoring life. The mounds themselves, rising from the earth, evoke a sense of timeless guardianship, an unspoken command that the emperor continues to watch, to rule, and to preside over the land from beyond. Walking near these ancient mounds, one senses a presence, a weight that is invisible yet palpable. The trees whisper, the wind hums across the grassy slopes, and the mind is drawn into centuries of reverence and ceremony. The emperors lie in silence, yet their authority persists, embedded in earth, ritual, and the collective memory of a civilization. These tombs are not merely graves, they are embodiments of sovereignty, ritual, and the enduring intersection of human ambition and divine order. The Kofun teach that some tombs are designed not to reveal, but to command from obscurity. They remind us that power, once accumulated, seeks continuity, that mortality need not erase authority, and that reverence can be enforced through silence and secrecy. Standing before a keyhole mound as the sun sets and shadows stretch across the forested slopes, one can almost hear the faint hum of ancient ceremonies, the rustle of Hanawa, the distant steps of attendants who served in life and remain in spirit. Even now, in the quiet of the forest, the emperors endure. Their tombs are monuments not only of stone, earth, and ritual, but of intention silent, commanding, and eternal. Some tombs are not to be opened. They are meant to preserve, to guard, and to remind the living that authority can transcend flesh. that memory can be sacred and that the dead, when treated with reverence, may continue to hold dominion over the land and the imagination. The Kofun of Japan are waiting, patient, eternal, and inexorably present. Beneath the arid sands and limestone cliffs of Abydos, one of Egypt's most sacred cities, lie tombs older than dynasties, shrouded in silence and sacred ritual. Here, the forgotten pharaohs sleep, their names erased from stone, their power preserved only in shadowed corridors and the faint whispers of the Nile wind. Abydos, a city of gods and kings, was not merely a burial site, it was a sacred axis connecting life and death, the living and the divine. The tombs here are labyrinths of intent, their chambers carved deep into rock, designed to shield their occupants from desecration, and to grant them passage into eternity, accompanied by offerings, inscriptions, and the magic of a civilization obsessed with immortality. The pharaohs buried at Abydos ruled in an age when death was both threat and promise. Records suggest that rulers who met violent ends, whose reigns were interrupted by intrigue, or whose names were expunged from official annals were interred here in secrecy. Their tombs were modest compared to the pyramids of Giza, yet rich with symbolism, walls painted with deities, altars bearing libations, and niches containing personal objects, jewelry, and ceremonial items. Every stone, every glyph, every chamber was meant to preserve identity and authority, to ensure that even in obscurity, the king's presence endured in both memory and spirit. Among the most enigmatic discoveries are tombs containing unusual burials, coffins without inscriptions, bodies bound in unconventional positions, and artifacts deliberately altered or broken. Some scholars suggest these pharaohs were victims of palace conspiracies, murdered by rivals or priests in the pursuit of power. Others propose ritualistic concealment, an attempt to shield the deceased from the wrath of enemies or to protect their souls from spiritual unrest. Chemical traces on certain mummies hint at poisons or embalming methods designed to preserve, hide, or even curse. These tombs are reminders that political ambition in life often continued after death, shaping fate from beyond the grave. Abydos itself amplifies the mystery. Pilgrims once walked its sacred paths to honor Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and the tombs were designed in alignment with temples, processional ways, and sacred precincts. The desert sands have shifted over millennia, swallowing entrances, concealing chambers, and leaving only whispers of kings whose existence was deliberately muted. Excavators find fragments of painted walls, traces of ceremonial vessels, and bones whose stories hinted intrigue, devotion, and fear. Even the air seems charged with memory, thick with the weight of centuries, as if the land itself remembers those buried in secrecy. The forgotten pharaohs of Abydos are a meditation on mortality, power, and the fragile boundary between presence and absence. Their tombs demonstrate that death is neither equality nor erasure. It is negotiation, preservation, and sometimes concealment. Standing before an unmarked chamber, one feels the authority of a ruler who refuses finality, whose essence is preserved not in monuments or praise, but in deliberate invisibility in chambers hidden by rock and sand. The tombs whisper a warning. Power interrupted and life seeks continuity in death. And some rulers are never truly gone. Even today, Abydos exhales its secrets slowly. Archaeologists uncover fragments, yet the full story of its pharaohs remains incomplete. Veiled in shadow and sand, the tombs are silent teachers, showing that memory can be sacred, that mortality can be negotiated, and that some graves exist not to reveal their occupants, but to preserve them, sovereign, eternal, and unseen. In the stillness of the desert, the forgotten kings of Abydos endure, their tombs guarding mysteries that invite reflection, reverence, and awe, a timeless testament to authority hidden in shadow and secrecy. Beneath the rugged hills and windswept plains of central Anatolia lies Hattusa, the ancient capital of the Hittite Empire, where the tombs of lost kings slumber in silence beneath layers of rock, soil, and time. These are not tombs of grandeur, nor chambers of glittering splendor, but sanctuaries of authority, secrecy, and ritual, built to endure both the passage of centuries and the ambitions of men who would erase the past. The Hittites, fierce rulers of the Bronze Age, understood death as a continuation of power, a transfer of influence, a negotiation with the divine, and a means to preserve their legacy beyond mortal comprehension. The city of Hattusa, with its labyrinthine streets, fortified walls, and sacred precincts, was more than a capital. It was a microcosm of Hittite cosmology. The kings who ruled here were intermediaries between gods and men, warriors and priests, whose lives were entwined with ritual, prophecy and conquest. When a ruler died, burial was not merely practical, but symbolic. Tombs were constructed deep within the city's sacred precincts or hidden in nearby cliffs, often accompanied by treasures, weapons, ceremonial vessels, and the remains of attendants or sacrificial animals, ensuring that the king's power endured beyond death. Archaeological discoveries in Hattusa reveal tombs that are enigmatic and often incomplete, suggesting hurried burials, political intrigue, or ritualistic concealment. Some sarcophagi bear inscriptions that hint at curses, warnings, or prayers for protection. Others contain skeletons showing signs of violent death, blunt trauma, strangulation, or ritualized wounds suggesting that the king may have been murdered or ritually sacrificed. The chambers themselves are compact yet intricate, carved with precision and care, sometimes hidden behind false walls, and aligned with celestial or geographical markers, as if the tomb's design itself were a form of spell, preserving the dead and shielding them from interference. The most haunting of these tombs are those where attendants or soldiers were interred alongside the king, their lives offered to ensure service in the afterlife. Bones show traces of strangulation, blunt force, or chemical intoxication, leaving a chilling testament to the Hittites' belief in loyalty and devotion beyond death. The tombs are intimate, claustrophobic, and suffused with ritual power, creating a space where the living and dead coexisted and where authority, fear, and obedience were preserved in soil and stone. Hattusa itself adds to the mystery. The ruins are punctuated by sacred gates, fortified walls, and temples, all aligned with ritual precision. Even centuries later, one can feel the pulse of the city beneath the soil, a rhythm of devotion, hierarchy, and concealed power. The tombs do not merely contain the dead, they embody the continuity of rulership, the negotiation of mortality, and the assertion of presence across centuries. The kings of Hattusa are silent yet potent, their tombs speaking through arrangement, artifact, and absence. They remind us that authority, once consolidated, seeks preservation. That mortality can be mediated through ritual, and as some tombs are designed not for admiration, but for protection, secrecy, and continuity. Standing on the ancient hills, listening to the wind whisper through crumbling stone, one can imagine the kings still watching, still commanding, their essence preserved in hidden chambers beneath layers of earth and time. Even now, the tombs of Hattusa endure, enigmatic and untouchable, guardians of secrets that may never be fully revealed. They are monuments not of spectacle, but of intention, spaces where life, death, and power converge, and where some kings, though forgotten by history, remain eternal, sovereign, and silently present. In the stillness of the Anatolian plains, the lost rulers wait, their tombs a quiet testament to authority, devotion, and the haunting persistence of mortality mediated through ritual. High in the arid coastal deserts of Peru, where the mountains meet the Pacific and the sun casts long, relentless shadows over the sand, lie tombs that conceal the phantom mummies of ancient civilizations long swallowed by time. Here, the Nazca, Paracas, and other pre-Incan peoples interred their dead in the quietude of desert cliffs, caves, and earthen mounds, crafting resting places meant to preserve not only bodies, but authority, ritual, and the fragile thread between life and the afterlife. These tombs are more than burial sites, they are echoes of a world where mortality was negotiated with ceremony, secrecy, and meticulous care. The Paracas, in particular, were masterful embalmers, wrapping their dead in bundles of textiles dyed with vibrant pigments, meticulously layering robes, ornaments, and offerings in preparation for the journey beyond. Some mummies were elongated, their heads intentionally shaped in life to signify social status or spiritual power, while their resting bundles contained intricate grave goods, ceramics, jewelry, and tools designed to sustain them in the world beyond. The desert, ever vigilant, preserved these mummies with a chilling perfection, the dry winds and sand acting as both guardian and silent witness to centuries of ritualized devotion. Yet the tombs themselves are enigmatic. Archaeologists have uncovered mummies whose bodies bear evidence of ritual sacrifice, strangulation, or sudden death, suggesting that high-status individuals were accompanied by attendants in their journey beyond. Other mummies, sometimes referred to as the phantom mummies, display unusual anomalies, elongated skulls, unusual postures, or traces of substances whose purpose remains unexplained. Some suggest these are symbolic, others believe them to be practical, perhaps intended to mark status or power in the afterlife. The desert keeps its secrets tightly, revealing only fragments to those who dare to excavate or explore. In addition to the human remains, tombs contain offerings that speak to a deeply held belief in continuity and protection. Ceremonial vessels, food, textiles, and even miniature representations of servants or animals accompanied the dead, a tangible extension of status and authority into eternity. Some tombs show signs of hurried preparation or clandestine burial, hinting at social upheaval, disease, or ritual decisions made to preserve secrecy. The combination of careful embalming and enigmatic anomalies has made these tombs a subject of fascination, wonder, and unease for archaeologists and historians alike. The desert itself becomes part of the tomb, a living guardian, shifting sand swallow entrances. Dry winds whistle through tunnels, and sudden erosion exposes chambers only to have them vanish again, preserving both bodies and mysteries. Silence reigns supreme. Entering a tomb is to step into a realm where centuries converge, where the meticulous care of the Paracas or Nazca embalmers remains palpable, and where the phantom mummies continue their journey in stillness, their gaze imagined but unbroken. The tombs of these phantom mummies remind us that mortality can be negotiated through ritual, preservation, and secrecy. They embody continuity of identity, authority, and spiritual presence in a world that has long forgotten the living. Standing among the burial bundles, one feels the tension between permanence and fragility, the dance between life and death, and the care with which ancient peoples wove devotion, power, and memory into the very fabric of the desert. Even today, these tombs remain elusive, revealing only hints of their occupants, offering glimpses of ritual and devotion, yet guarding their deepest secrets. The phantom mummies endure in silence, preserved by sand, wind, and the meticulous hands of their makers. They are lessons in mortality, reverence, and persistence, proving that some tombs are not merely resting places, they are living monuments to ritual, memory, and the human desire to transcend the finality of death. Along the sun-scorched plains of Amarna, where the Nile widens and the horizon shimmers like molten gold, lie tombs of pharaohs whose names and faces have been deliberately erased from history. This was Akhenaten, the city of the heretic king. Akhenaten, a place where devotion, rebellion, and ambition intertwine with the divine, leaving behind tombs that are at once magnificent and disturbingly silent. The rulers of Amarna dared to reshape faith itself, and their burial sites reflect both innovation and secrecy, a testament to power that sought immortality while defying tradition. The city of Amarna rose in the 14th century BCE during a radical experiment in monotheism centered on the worship of Aten, the sun disk. Akhenaten abandoned Thebes, built temples and palaces bathed in sunlight, and commissioned tombs carved into cliffs and rocky escarpments, designed to honor him and his family in ways that departed from millennia of Egyptian ritual. These tombs were intended as eternal sanctuaries, spaces where kings and queens could continue to govern in death as they had in life, surrounded by servants, offerings, and symbolic artifacts that ensured their connection to the divine. Yet the tombs of Amarna are enigmatic. Many were left unfinished, others desecrated or erased in the years following Akhenaten's death, as his successors sought to restore traditional worship and erase the heresy from memory. The tomb of Akhenaten himself, still lost, is whispered to contain intricate reliefs of the royal family, sun-drenched representations of Aten, and treasures designed to sustain life beyond death. Nearby tombs of queens, including the mysterious Nefertiti, whose final resting place remains undiscovered, contain burial chambers that hint at secrecy, hurried preparation, or deliberate concealment. Scholars have debated whether these tombs were abandoned due to political upheaval, ritual necessity, or fear of spiritual retribution. Inside the surviving chambers, archaeologists have uncovered traces of embalming, painted reliefs, and unusual symbolic modifications to the placement of sarcophagi and offerings. Some mummies appear to have been removed, relocated, or destroyed, suggesting that even in death, these rulers were caught in the tides of history and intrigue. The tombs reflect a civilization grappling with radical ideology, mortality, and legacy, preserving both ambition and the consequences of rebellion. Walking among the cliffs of Amarna, one senses the tension of vanished dynasties. The wind whistles across empty burial niches, carrying faint echoes of ceremonial chants and prayers lost to time. The tombs are not only resting places, but monuments to audacity, impermanence, and the fragility of memory. They teach that power, when intertwined with conviction, may defy tradition, but mortality remains inexorable, and even kings may vanish into shadow, leaving only subtle traces of devotion, ritual, and rebellion. The vanished pharaohs of Amarna, enduring absence as much as presence, their tombs, half hidden, half erased, remind us that mortality is negotiated not only through ritual and preservation, but through secrecy, obscurity, and the shifting sands of memory. They are quiet warnings that some tombs exist not for admiration, but to preserve the essence of those who dared to defy the past and sought eternity on their own terms. In the golden light of the desert, the lost rulers of Amarna watched silently, their tombs whispering secrets of ambition, faith, and mortality that time has only deepened. Beneath the rugged hills and sun-baked plains of ancient Macedonia, where the shadows of mountains stretch long across the land, and the winds carry whispers of forgotten battles, lie tombs of kings whose names once commanded empires and now linger only in fragments of legend. Here, Alexander's forebears and their royal predecessors sleep, hidden beneath mounds of stone and earth, their resting places shrouded in secrecy, ambition, and the echo of conquest. Macedonia, a land of warriors and strategists, understood the weight of death as a continuation of power, and its kings were interred with a meticulous devotion to both ritual and legacy, ensuring their presence would endure long after their mortal bodies decayed. The tombs of Macedonian rulers date back to the 4th century BCE and earlier, crafted during an age when monarchy and divinity intertwined. Kings were buried with weapons, armor, ceremonial vessels, and treasures reflecting the wealth and might they wielded in life. Funerary practices also included symbolic offerings, horses, servants, and attendants interred to continue service in the afterlife. Yet the tombs themselves were often modest in scale compared to the empires the rulers commanded, reflecting a culture that prized strategy, secrecy, and the safeguarding of legacy over ostentatious display. Among the most enigmatic are tombs, whose exact locations remain unknown, including those of King Philip II, Alexander's father, and other members of the royal lineage. Philip's burial site, according to accounts, was richly adorned with gold, weapons, and ceremonial armor. Its subsequent centuries witnessed looting, political upheaval, and deliberate concealment. Archaeologists have uncovered tombs in Virginia, including the famous royal tombs with exquisite frescoes, precious artifacts, and traces of ritual sacrifice. Skeletal analysis and artifact placement suggest deaths were sudden, sometimes violent, and occasionally accompanied by symbolic acts meant to preserve authority or denote divine favor. Some tombs exhibit deliberate erasure walls stripped of inscriptions, sarcophagi moved or destroyed, and treasures hidden or removed. These acts reflect both political intrigue and the Macedonian understanding that authority extended beyond life. The dead were not idle, they were potent symbols, rulers in perpetuity whose presence shaped memory, lineage, and even the loyalty of the living. The careful positioning of artifacts, funerary rites, and symbolic items in tombs demonstrates a profound meditation on mortality, legacy, and the subtle assertion of control over history itself. The land itself guards these tombs. Rolling plains, rocky ridges, and hidden valleys conceal entrances, while centuries of erosion and vegetation mask the tombs from casual view. Standing near a burial mound, one feels a weight, a tension between absence and authority, as if the ghosts of kings still survey their domain, silent and unyielding. The tombs are not simply resting places, they are deliberate statements, designed to endure both the elements and human curiosity, preserving the influence of rulers who commanded armies, lands, and loyalty. The Macedonian tombs teach that power, once attained, seeks permanence even in death, and that mortality is negotiated through secrecy, ritual, and the careful orchestration of presence. The vanished kings endure in shadow, their tombs whispering through stone, soil, and the faint echo of footsteps lost to history. Even today, as sunlight glances off weathered stone and the wind stirs ancient grass, the tombs exude quiet authority, guardians of secrets and reminders that some rulers remain eternal, not through monuments or memory alone, but through the silent command of chambers designed to outlast time itself. In the stillness of the Macedonian plains, the disappeared kings watch, their tombs a testament to ambition, ritual, and the subtle negotiation between life, death, and legacy. Some tombs are not meant to be uncovered, they are meant to preserve, to endure, and to command, their mysteries lingering as a quiet, eternal presence over the land they once ruled. Beneath the rolling plains and misted hills of ancient China, Where rivers carve silent paths and bamboo forests sway like green specters, lie the tombs of the phantom emperors of the Han Dynasty, rulers whose presence endures more in shadow than in record. These are not grandiose palaces of stone or gold, but subterranean sanctuaries, buried deep beneath earth and time, designed to preserve authority, ritual, and the illusion of immortality. The Han emperors understood death as both passage and assertion, a continuation of power mediated through secrecy, ceremony, and careful orchestration of legacy. The Han Dynasty, flourishing between 206 BCE and 20 CE, was a civilization of paradoxes, immense bureaucracy, intricate artistry, and a fascination with the cosmos and the afterlife. The emperor's tombs were carefully concealed, often built with complex underground chambers, hidden corridors, and protective layers of earth and stone. Inside, the dead were accompanied by treasures, weapons, ceremonial vessels, and sometimes clay models of servants, animals, and even entire palaces, a microcosm of imperial life designed to ensure their dominance continued beyond mortality. Ancient texts speak of tomb guardians, elaborate traps, and symbolic inscriptions meant to protect the emperor's resting place from intrusion, preserving not only physical treasures, but also spiritual authority. Some tombs contain evidence of rituals both awe-inspiring and unsettling. Human sacrifices, though not ubiquitous, appear in certain burials, often attendants or servants meant to accompany their master in the afterlife. Archaeologists have uncovered traces of chemical substances, perhaps intended to preserve bodies or to deter desecration, and walls adorned with intricate carvings depicting cosmic order, divine authority, and the emperor's achievements. Yet, many tombs remain untouched, their contents speculative, their chambers a mystery protected by centuries of soil, sediment, and secrecy. The most haunting are tombs whose emperors vanished from historical record, their lives and deaths obscured by political intrigue, rebellion, or deliberate erasure. Some mummies show signs of violent death, hastened burial, or unusual embalming, hinting at conspiracies and unrest even at the heart of the imperial court. Other tombs appear deliberately concealed, entrances obscured or filled with protective inscriptions warning of misfortune or death for intruders. The emperor's presence is palpable, even in absence of silent authority that shapes the landscape and the imagination alike. Visiting these tombs, one is enveloped by a sense of weight and patience. The earth itself seems alive, holding the power of dynasties, the rituals of the long dead, and the memory of emperors who commanded kingdoms from beyond the veil. Each chamber, artifact, and burial rite testifies to a culture deeply attuned to mortality, ritual, and the negotiation of power in life and afterlife. The tombs are not simply resting places, they are carefully curated continuations of influence, deliberate and enduring, a reminder that mortality need not diminish sovereignty. Even today, the phantom emperors endure in silence. Their tombs are concealed beneath earth and vegetation, whispering secrets of authority, devotion, and ritual to those who approach with reverence. They are lessons in patience, secrecy, and continuity, showing that some rulers achieve immortality not through monuments visible to the world, but through carefully orchestrated absence, mystery, and enduring presence. In the quiet of the Han plains, the emperors watch still, sovereign and eternal, their tombs a solemn testament to the delicate balance between life, death, and legacy. Beneath the sun-baked plains and winding rivers of ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates converge like silver veins across a land of dust and clay, lie the tombs of lost kings whose names have been swallowed by time. These are the rulers of Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon, empires of astonishing ingenuity, ambition, and ritual, whose burial sites were designed not merely to contain bodies, but to preserve authority, memory, and cosmic order. Here, death was a continuation of power, and tombs were sacred spaces where life, divinity, and eternity converged in earth, brick, and shadow. The kings of Mesopotamia ruled in cities that rose like islands of civilization in the vast desert. Uruk, Nippur, and Babylon. Their tombs, often built within the city walls or in nearby sacred precincts, were filled with treasures, ritual vessels, and inscriptions designed to ensure their passage into the afterlife. Gold, lapis, and precious artifacts were interred with the dead, alongside clay figurines representing attendants, soldiers, and animals meant to serve them beyond mortal existence. The tombs were carefully aligned, often positioned to correspond with celestial movements, reflecting a belief in the harmony between heaven, earth, and kingship. Among the most haunting are the royal tombs at including that attributed to Queen Pwabi, whose death was accompanied by a retinue of attendants, animals, and ceremonial offerings. Skeletons suggest ritual sacrifice, with attendants placed beside the deceased to continue service in the afterlife. The tombs contain intricate jewelry, ceremonial daggers, and headdresses that gleam faintly even after millennia, reflecting the splendor and authority of a ruler whose power extended beyond life. Yet many chambers remain lost. Their occupants vanished from history, leaving only empty spaces, traces of brick, and whispers of wealth and ritual. Some tombs show evidence of violent ends, trauma on skeletons, hurried burials, or signs of political upheaval, suggesting that mortality was intertwined with intrigue, conquest, and ambition. Other tombs were deliberately concealed or altered, inscriptions erased, and treasures hidden, reflecting both reverence and the desire to protect the legacy of a ruler from plunderers or political enemies. The earth itself becomes a guardian, preserving authority while shrouding secrets in sand, clay, and shadow. Walking among the mounds and ruins, one senses the presence of kings long gone. The air feels heavy with memory, the faint echo of ceremonial chants, and the weight of human endeavor that sought to defy oblivion. The tombs are not merely resting places. They are statements of sovereignty, continuity, and a sacred negotiation. Between mortality and power, the dead remain vigilant, silent yet potent, their authority preserved in ritual, arrangement, and the careful orchestration of presence beyond life. The tombs of Mesopotamian kings teach that death is not an end, but a continuation. That power can persist in absence, and that secrecy is itself a form of immortality. Even today, the earth whispers their stories, kings buried in hidden chambers, attendants sacrificed to service, treasures preserved beneath layers of soil. These tombs endure as monuments to ambition, devotion, and the human desire to transcend mortality, proving that some graves are not only resting places, they are eternal expressions of authority, ritual, and the inexorable persistence of memory. In the fading light of Mesopotamia's plains, the lost kings endure, their tombs silent yet commanding. Some tombs are not to be unearthed. They exist to preserve, to teach, and to remind us that even in death, rulers can remain sovereign, eternal, and unseen. Deep within the rugged hills and desert expanses of ancient Nubia, near the sacred city of Napata, lie tombs that hold the shadow pharaoh's rulers whose reigns flickered briefly in history, whose power was both formidable and fragile, and whose resting places have been shrouded in secrecy for millennia. These tombs are neither ostentatious nor easily accessible. Instead, they are carved with precision into rock faces, hidden beneath the sands, and surrounded by silence, their presence known only to those who once served them or dared to glimpse their authority. Here, death was a continuation of rule, and tombs became sanctuaries where the ephemeral nature of life was transformed into enduring influence. The kingdom of Napata flourished during the first millennium BCE, a time when Nubian pharaohs expanded their influence across Egypt and the Nile, merging cultures, armies, and divine legitimacy. Kings of this era were warriors and priests, rulers, who sought to preserve authority through ritual, conquest, and elaborate burial practices. The shadow pharaohs, often short-trained or politically contested, were interred with artifacts meant to assert their legitimacy beyond life: jewelry, ceremonial weapons, ritual vessels, and sometimes attendants sacrificed or placed in the tomb. To continue service, the tombs were modest compared to royal pyramids, yet suffused with power, ritual, and careful intent. Archaeologists have uncovered chambers where human and animal sacrifices were evident, suggesting that even kings who had little time to consolidate authority in life were provided for in death. Some mummies bear signs of sudden or violent demise, blunt force trauma, hastened embalming, or unusual burial positions hinting at palace intrigue, rebellion, or conflict with rival dynasties. Other tombs show traces of deliberate concealment, entrances blocked with stone, corridors hidden behind false walls, and inscriptions warning of curses or spiritual retribution for intruders. The shadow pharaoh's authority was preserved in secrecy, their tombs serving both as resting places and as statements of continued presence. The desert and hills themselves protect these tombs. Shifting sands conceal entrances, winds whisper through narrow passages, and the scorching sun acts as both eraser and guardian, preserving bodies, relics, and the power embedded in the earth. The tombs are intimate yet imposing, reflecting a culture in which kingship was inseparable from the divine. and where mortality was negotiated through ritual, secrecy, and the orchestration of legacy. Visiting these tombs, one feels the tension between presence and absence, between history and erasure. The shadow pharaohs endure not through monuments visible to all, but through silent chambers, protective architecture, and the artifacts that hint at lives of ambition, devotion, and political turbulence. Their tombs teach that power extends beyond the physical, that secrecy itself can be authority, and that death need not diminish sovereignty, it merely transforms its expression. Even today, beneath Napata's desert hills, the shadow pharaohs watch silently, their tombs endure, secret, sacred, and sovereign, preserving the essence of rulers whose presence refuses finality. Some tombs are not meant to be found. They are meant to endure, commanding respect and reverence, a quiet testament to the negotiation between mortality, legacy, and eternal authority. In the stillness of Nubia's desert, the shadow pharaohs remain, unseen but undeniably present. High in the rugged mountains and volcanic plateaus of ancient Urartu, near the shimmering waters of Lake Van, lie the tombs of kings whose names have faded into shadow. These are the vanished rulers of a kingdom that once rivaled Assyria, whose citadels and fortresses crowned the hills like stones reaching for the sky, and whose burial sites were designed to preserve authority, mystery, and the sacred connection between life, death, and divine protection. In Urartu, mortality was not surrender, but transformation, and the tombs of its kings became sanctuaries of power, ritual, and silent vigilance. The Urartian kingdom thrived between the 9th and 6th centuries BCE, a civilization renowned for its skill in metallurgy, architecture, and fortification. Kings were interred in chambers built into mountainsides or under protective mounts, often accompanied by treasures, ceremonial weapons, and objects imbued with ritual significance. The tombs were designed to endure both the passage of time and the ambitions of men, reflecting the belief that authority and divine favor could persist beyond death, and that the resting place of a ruler could continue to command awe, respect, and fear. Archaeological evidence reveals tombs containing elaborate metalwork, jewelry, pottery, and inscriptions carved into stone, marking the presence of rulers whose reigns were sometimes brief, often contested, and occasionally violent. Some mummies display signs of trauma or hurried burial, suggesting political intrigue, sudden death, or ritualized practices intended to preserve the king's presence in the afterlife. Attendants or animals, occasionally sacrificed or symbolically represented, were placed alongside the dead, ensuring that service, loyalty, and status endured beyond mortal existence. The tombs themselves are enigmatic. Many remain hidden or inaccessible, concealed by centuries of erosion, vegetation, and volcanic activity. Entrances are often marked with cryptic carvings, symbolic warnings, or protective iconography. The silence within these chambers is profound, punctuated only by the faint echoes of ancient ritual and the imagined rustle of garments, footsteps, or ceremonial gestures. Each artifact, sarcophagus, and wall carving embodies a deliberate meditation on mortality, authority, and cosmic order. Walking near Urartian tombs, one senses the tension between presence and absence, the living and the dead, and the fragile line between history and oblivion. The vanished kings endure not in monuments easily seen, but in hidden chambers, in protective mounds, and in the careful orchestration of ritual and secrecy. Their tombs remind us that power, once established, seeks permanence, and that mortality is negotiated through ceremony, concealment, and intention. Even now, amid the mountains and mist, the kings of Urartu watch silently. Their tombs persist as guardians of memory, sovereignty, and ritual, waiting in shadow for eyes that approach with reverence. Some tombs are never to be opened. They are meant to preserve, to protect, and to command, a quiet testament to rulers who continue to exert influence long after the last breath of life has faded. In the stillness of Urartu's hills, the vanished kings endure, sovereign, eternal, and unseen. Deep within the dense jungles and meandering rivers of Cambodia, where the mist curls around ancient stone and the air hums with insects and unseen creatures, lie the tombs of the silent emperors of Angkor. These rulers, whose power once radiated across the Khmer Empire, now rest beneath the sprawling temples and hidden burial chambers, their presence preserved in shadow, stone, and ritual. Death was not an end here. It was a transformation, a continuation of divine authority that extended beyond flesh and time. The Khmer Empire, flourishing from the 9th to the 15th century CE, was a civilization of grandeur and devotion, where kings were seen as earthly embodiments of divine power. Temples like Angkor Wat, Bayon, and Top Rome were not only places of worship but extensions of the royal tombs, architectural declarations of eternity, cosmic order, and spiritual authority. Burial practices, though less monumental than the stone temples, were carefully designed. Chambers hidden within temple complexes, adorned with offerings, ceremonial objects, and inscriptions meant to preserve the emperor's essence and ensure their continued presence in both earthly and spiritual realms. Some tombs reveal rituals of startling precision and devotion. Skeletons of royal attendants or servants have been found alongside the deceased, sometimes suggesting sacrifice or symbolic service, ensuring that the ruler's command persisted into eternity. Treasures of jade, gold, ceramics, and ritual vessels were placed with intent, while the architecture of tombs and temple chambers aligned with celestial movements, echoing a worldview in which life, death, and the cosmos were inseparable. Yet, many burial sites remain undiscovered, swallowed by jungle, erosion, or deliberate concealment, their secrets preserved for centuries. The silent emperor's tombs often exhibit evidence of sudden or violent death, hurried preparation, or ritualistic care designed to assert power even in absence. Walls may bear faint carvings, inscriptions may be eroded or deliberately obscured, and pathways within tombs are labyrinthine, a protective measure against intruders and desecration. In these hidden spaces, the ruler's presence is palpable, authority made tangible through careful placement of artifacts, spatial arrangement, and ritual design. Walking among the ruins and forested corridors, one senses the quiet weight of sovereignty. The emperors are unseen but present, their power, mediated through architecture, ritual, and the careful orchestration of death. The tombs of Angkor teach that some rulers achieve immortality not through visibility, but through patience, secrecy, and spiritual continuity. Even centuries later, the silent emperors watch from the shadows of jungle and stone, their tombs, a testament to authority, devotion, and the enduring negotiation between life, death, and legacy. Even now, as mist curls across the temple spires and the jungle exhales its damp breath, the silent emperors endure. Their tombs remain hidden, sacred, and sovereign, guarding the mysteries of a civilization that understood death as an extension of rule. Some tombs are not meant to be unearthed. They exist to preserve presence, command reverence, and demonstrate that mortality, when approached with ritual and intention, can coexist with authority that lasts across centuries. In the stillness of Angkor's forest, the emperors remain eternal, unseen, and unbroken. Beneath the sun-baked hills and labyrinthine palaces of ancient Crete, where the waves of the Aegean crash against rugged cliffs and the wind carries the scent of salt and olive, lie the tombs of forgotten queens whose names have been lost to time. These were women of power, influence, and ritual authority, rulers in their own right, guardians of dynasties and shapers of the Minoan world. Their resting places are neither monumental nor ostentatious. They are intimate chambers, carved from rock or constructed from stone, hidden within sacred precincts or buried beneath the floors of palaces like Knossos, Phaistos, and Malia. The Minoan civilization, flourishing between 2700 and 1450 BCE, revered queens not only as consorts, but as priestesses, intermediaries with the divine, and rulers whose spiritual authority was entwined with the life of the palace and city. Burial practices for these queens reflect both reverence and mystery. Bodies were placed in chambers surrounded by offerings, jewelry, ceremonial pottery, and symbolic artifacts representing fertility, protection, and divine favor. Some tombs included small figurines or fresco fragments, suggesting rituals of guidance and service in the afterlife, while the placement of objects and orientation of the chamber reflected an understanding of cosmic harmony and sacred geometry. Yet the tombs of these queens are enigmatic. Many show signs of hurried interment, perhaps due to sudden death, political intrigue, or dynastic upheaval. Some chambers are empty, their contents looted or intentionally concealed, leaving only walls painted with fading symbols and the faint traces of ritual practice. Evidence of ritual sacrifice appears in a few sites, where attendants or animals were offered to accompany the queen, ensuring that authority, protection, and spiritual power extended beyond life. The tombs themselves were hidden, protected by palace walls, labyrinthine corridors, or even the deliberate placement of false entrances, ensuring secrecy and preservation. Walking among the ruins of Knossos or the cliffs overlooking the sea, one feels the subtle presence of these queens. The air seems charged with centuries of devotion, political maneuvering, and sacred ritual. Their authority lingers not in grand monuments or inscriptions, but in the careful orchestration of death and afterlife, in the quiet potency of objects left with intention, and in the chambers that preserve memory through absence as much as presence. The forgotten queens of Crete teach that power can exist beyond visibility, and that mortality can be negotiated through ritual, concealment, and devotion. Their tombs are silent yet commanding, intimate yet eternal, preserving not only bodies but authority, legacy, and spiritual continuity. Even now, centuries later, the queens endure in shadow, their tombs whispering secrets of devotion, sovereignty, and the delicate balance between life, death, and remembrance. Some tombs are not meant to be open. They exist to preserve, to protect, and to assert power that extends far beyond mortal life. In the quiet of Crete's palaces and cliffs, the forgotten queens remain eternal, unseen, and sovereign. Deep along the Nile's western banks, where the river bends like a silver serpent and the sun bleaches the desert into gold, lie the tombs of the hidden pharaohs of Kush. These are rulers of a kingdom that rose in shadow, a civilization entwined with Egypt yet resolutely independent, whose kings and queens built pyramids smaller than Gizeh's, but no less sacred, and whose burial sites are repositories of power, ritual, and enigma. In Kush, death was both a passage and a proclamation, a continuation of sovereignty, carefully orchestrated to preserve presence and command even beyond the mortal coil. The kingdom of Kush flourished from roughly 1070 BCE to 350 CE, its rulers bridging cultures, languages, and religious traditions. The pyramids at Meroe, steep and narrow, crown the desert like sentinels of memory, each concealing chambers of stone and ritual, designed to endure both time and intrusion within. Pharaohs were laid to rest with offerings, jewelry, weapons, and objects that symbolized authority, protection, and cosmic order. Tombs often contained inscriptions invoking divine favor and warning against desecration, revealing a culture deeply attuned to the interplay of mortality, spirituality, and political continuity. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of ritualized burials, mummies positioned with care, attendants or symbolic figures included for eternal service, and traces of ceremonial materials meant to safeguard both body and soul. Some tombs bear signs of sudden death or political unrest, with indications of hurried preparation, altered inscriptions, or chambers deliberately concealed. Certain pyramids remain unexcavated, their secrets protected by sand, erosion, and deliberate architectural obscurity, leaving only faint outlines to hint at the rulers who sleep within. The tombs themselves are enigmatic, intimate yet potent. The small, narrow chambers amplify the weight of history, the quiet of centuries, and the presence of those who once ruled. Stepping near a pyramid, one can almost feel the pulse of the past, footsteps of priests whispered incantations, and the gaze of a pharaoh who continues to watch, commanding from beneath stone and sand. The Kushite kings understood mortality as negotiation, authority as enduring, and secrecy as bold protection and proclamation even. Today, the hidden pharaohs endure. Their tombs whisper of devotion, ambition, and a desire to transcend death, offering lessons in preservation, reverence, and the subtle exercise of power beyond life. Some tombs are not meant to be disturbed. They exist to endure, to guard, and to assert sovereignty silently. Amid the sands and heat of the Nubian deserts, the pharaohs of Kush remain eternal, unseen yet present, their tombs a testament to the enduring negotiation between life, death, and legacy. High atop the rugged plateaus and fertile valleys of Ethiopia, where the air is thin and the horizon stretches into haze, lie the tombs of the concealed kings of Axum. These rulers, architects of a civilization that bridged Africa and the ancient Mediterranean, rest in silence beneath stelae, stone chambers, and earth that has long absorbed the weight of history. Axum, a kingdom of monumental ambition, trade, and sacred devotion, revered its monarchs not only as sovereigns but as intermediaries with the divine, and their tombs reflect the careful orchestration of mortality, ritual, and eternal authority. The Axumite kingdom flourished between the 1st and 10th centuries CE, a civilization renowned for its monumental stelae, intricate coinage, and sacred churches. Kings were buried with treasures, ceremonial vessels, and ritual objects often within chambers concealed beneath the earth or hidden in plain sight, beneath stelae designed to honor both memory and divine favor. Some tombs contained attendants, symbolic or real, intended to serve the ruler in the afterlife, while inscriptions invoked blessings, cosmic harmony, and protection against desecration. The tombs were intimate yet powerful, blending human ambition, spiritual devotion, and a desire for continuity across generations. Among the most enigmatic are tombs whose locations remain deliberately obscured. Some are thought to lie beneath the great monolithic stelae of Axum, hidden by architecture and soil, protected from time, looters, and even memory itself. Archaeological evidence suggests that certain rulers may have been buried in secrecy to avoid political interference, rebellion, or ritual impurity, leaving behind chambers with sparse but carefully chosen offerings arranged to preserve status, power, and divine connection. The silence within these tombs is palpable, a quiet authority that speaks through stone, shadow, and ceremonial precision. Evidence from excavations hints at sudden deaths, hurried burials, or symbolic rituals designed to extend influence beyond the grave. Attendants or symbolic figures were positioned with care, objects aligned with celestial markers, and chambers constructed to endure both the elements and human intrusion. These tombs reflect a worldview in which death was not surrender, but transformation. Authority and presence persisted through ritual, architecture, and concealment. Walking among the ruins, one senses the subtle weight of kingship. The concealed rulers of Axum endure in shadow, commanding from beneath earth and stone, their tombs teaching lessons in secrecy, continuity, and the delicate negotiation of mortality and legacy. Even today, amid the hills and valleys, the tombs whisper of ambition, devotion, and a quiet assertion of power beyond life. Some tombs are not meant to be discovered. They exist to preserve, protect, and proclaim authority in silence. In the stillness of Axum's plateaus, the kings watch, eternal, unseen, and sovereign, deep within the dense forests and stone-clad terraces of Angkor Thom, where sunlight filters through temple spires and the air carries the weight of centuries, lie the tombs of hidden monarchs, rulers whose power once shaped the Khmer Empire, and whose resting places remain secreted away from time and human gaze. These tombs are not grand monuments like Angkor Wat, but intimate, sacred spaces, carved into rock or concealed beneath temple foundations, designed to preserve authority, ritual, and the enduring presence of kings long vanished from history. Angkor Thom, the last and most fortified capital of the Khmer Empire, flourished in the 12th and 13th centuries CE. Its rulers were both warriors and divine intermediaries, commanding not only armies, but spiritual devotion. Burial practices reflected this duality. Kings were interred with offerings of jewelry, ceremonial weapons, ritual vessels, and occasionally attendants or symbolic representations meant to continue service in the afterlife. Tombs were aligned with sacred geometry, corridors designed to reflect cosmic order, and chambers crafted to ensure that even in death, the ruler's authority persisted, extending invisibly across the city and the empire. Some tombs exhibit traces of secrecy and hurried construction, suggesting sudden deaths, political intrigue, or deliberate concealment. Inscriptions may have been erased, entrances hidden beneath rubble, and chambers left unmarked to avoid desecration. Evidence of ritual sacrifice appears in rare cases, with attendants or symbolic items positioned to accompany the deceased into eternity. Objects within the tombs are meticulously arranged, demonstrating a culture that understood mortality as a negotiation with both the divine and the living, where presence and death could command respect, loyalty, and cosmic balance. The hidden monarchs of Angkor Thom endure not only in body, but in architecture. Temple corridors, foundations, and subterranean chambers act as extensions of their will, blending physical presence with ritual and symbolism. Walking among these ruins, the air feels charged with devotion and authority. Even in absence, the ruler's presence is palpable, a reminder that sovereignty can persist beyond mortality when carefully orchestrated through ritual and secrecy. These tombs teach that power need not always be visible to endure. The hidden monarchs remind us that mortality is not a cessation, but a transformation, where authority continues in silence, protected by stone, ritual, and deliberate concealment. Some tombs are never meant to be found. They exist to preserve presence, assert sovereignty, and maintain the delicate balance between life, death, and legacy. In the quiet shadows of Angkor Thom, the hidden monarchs remain eternal, unseen, and sovereign, their tombs whispering secrets of devotion, ambition, and the relentless persistence of power. Long before pyramids, before dynasties of kings and pharaohs, and even before writing itself, the hills of southeastern Anatolia held secrets carved into stone, their echoes preserved in the silent, enigmatic ruins of Göbekli Tepe. Here, atop windswept ridges, lie tombs and enclosures that defy understanding, resting places of the eternal watchers, figures whose identities are lost, whose rituals are unknowable, yet whose presence persists across millennia. These are not grand royal tombs in the conventional sense. They are sacred spaces where death, devotion, and cosmic observation converge. Frozen in stone and silence, whispering stories older than memory, Göbekli Tepe, dating back to the 10th millennium BCE, is one of humanity's oldest known ceremonial complexes. Massive T-shaped pillars engraved with serpents, predators, and abstract symbols rise from the earth like guardians, their carvings at once protective and portentous. Among these pillars, archaeologists have uncovered burial sites simple, yet profound. Individuals interred here were accompanied by ritual objects, animal remains, and offerings whose meanings remain elusive. Some graves were placed deliberately beneath stone circles or in alignment with pillars, suggesting a profound understanding of space, symbolism, and perhaps celestial observation. The eternal watchers of Göbekli Tepe were likely tribal leaders, shamans, or ritual specialists, their authority intertwined with spiritual practice and communal oversight. Many skeletons show signs of careful placement, ritual positioning, or preparation that suggests reverence rather than the hurried burials of conflict. Yet anomalies exist. Some remains are isolated, placed under megaliths, or accompanied by enigmatic carvings, as if their death was not only a passage, but also an eternal act of vigilance. Were they protectors of knowledge, intermediaries with forces unseen, or sentinels against the chaos of mortality? The stones offer no answers, only the silence of eternity. The burial sites at Göbekli Tepe evoke awe and unease. The air seems charged with energy, the wind across the ridges carrying whispers of ceremonies long vanished. Shadows of T-shaped pillars stretch over graves, connecting earth and sky, life and death. Unlike later tombs, these are not ostentatious. They do not flaunt wealth, nor do they emphasize conquest. Instead, they embody presence, ritual, and eternal observation, reflecting a culture in which mortality was mediated through alignment, devotion, and sacred geometry. Even today, the eternal watchers endure, buried beneath stone, surrounded by pillars that have survived millennia. They remain silent yet potent, guardians of memory, ritual, and the profound human need to negotiate death. Some tombs may never be unearthed, some rituals never understood, yet the watchers persist timeless, unseen, and vigilant. In the quiet of Göbekli Tepe, the dead observe still, teaching that some tombs are not merely resting places, but eternal witnesses to humanity's first glimpses of sacredness, mortality, and cosmic order.